Another bad one out of Colorado Springs that claimed the lives of 4. It's possible that because aircraft was approaching Steamboat Springs at night, that CFIT occurred, that is controlled flight into terrain, but we won't know for quite some time.
We are continuing our coverage of a deadly plane crash near Steamboat Springs overnight. 4 people were killed in that crash. The plane was coming from Nashville.
9 News aviation expert Greg Feith joins us now to talk a little bit more about what we know, what we don't know. Flying into the mountains at night obviously increases the risk?
Oh, absolutely. It's challenging just because of the terrain, given the fact that Steamboat Springs, the airport itself, has a short runway, very narrow, and it's embedded between several mountain peaks. And then there's a mountain right off the end of that runway. So it does make it a real challenge, especially going in at night.
So when they're approaching, and we also talk about the altitude too. I mean, so many times we focus on just the weather, but
Yes.
It's really more night and the mountains.
And a combination of the weather, because
Okay.
in this case, the weather last night in that area, there were layers of clouds. So if a pilot is making the approach and happens to see maybe the lights of Steamboat or even the airport itself, they may then try to recorrect or redirect the airplane direct to the airport, but then they get into a layer of clouds that is obscuring that terrain, and next thing you know, they're actually hitting the mountain, and that it looks to be that that's what happened here.
And we're looking at the terrain right now. I would imagine an approach to an airport like this is probably better off if you've done it in the past. We don't know much, I guess, about the pilot, but certainly coming into an airport like this before helps, I would imagine.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that the investigators are going to look at. It's always common to look at the aircraft to see if there is any kind of abnormal operation, mechanical malfunction that may have caused or contributed to the accident, giving the pilot false information or bad information. Then you shift to the pilot, looking at experience, understanding not only how much time they have in this airplane, but flying into this kind of terrain, this kind of airport. So that'll be part of the investigative process.
So you look at the plane too and see if there's any kind of, now they made a couple of stops, which is normal, right? Probably for fuel from Nashville to
They may have
Kansas.
picked up fuel or even picked up passengers.
Now, do you have a voice recording or something else you can listen to, or communication with the tower, anything to indicate any problems if they had problems?
The biggest thing is these airplanes do not have flight data recorders or cockpit voice recorders on them. They're not required. However, a lot of the instrumentation in these newer airplanes, and this was a late generation airplane, it was built in 2024, so it has the most modern, if you will, instrumentation. There is non-volatile memory that investigators can pull down out of the instruments to actually reconstruct the flight path. The other thing is, of course, air traffic control. What was the communication between the pilot, air traffic controllers? What was the pilot cleared for? Was he cleared down to a low altitude? Was he cleared to execute an instrument approach? Because when you go in at night, you have to follow these prescriptive instrument approaches. If you don't, you now lose all sorts of terrain or obstruction clearances.
And I know in situations like this, speculation is not good. You don't like to do it. However, when someone's coming into an airport like this on this kind of approach, if they're not seeing a mountain, what will the plane tell them and when?
Well, it's a good question, Phil, because there's two things. One, you have a visual picture, so you're looking out the forward windscreen. You may see lights in the distance, but because all the terrain is black, even the mountain that's sitting right in front of the airplane, it doesn't appear because you have no peripheral or you have no geographic reference of that hill. Now, there is equipment on the airplane called TAWS, Terrain Awareness Warning System. But again, you know you're flying into the mountains, you know you may be getting a terrain warning. And a lot of pilots will keep going knowing, well, I know that I'm in terrain and I know I'm going to get the warning, and they kind of either ignore it or they don't respect it. And unfortunately, that's going to be something that as an investigator, I would be looking at from a human factors perspective.
So